Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In life, you come across all kinds of individuals. In my experience, and I'm sure it's the experience of many people, you meet those individuals who inspire you, have such a breadth of knowledge, can speak about Islam with conviction, they can speak about the world with conviction. They're able to quote people, and all in all, they're magnetic and they're charismatic. They're able to articulate, they're able to defend the faith. And most importantly, they always have people around them, gravitating towards them. Now you wonder why. I found in each one of them, there's been a common thread. And I'm not going to share the common thread with you. I'll have my panelists to say why those individuals are who they are. And you and I know that all of us want to lead a life of purpose. How can we ensure that our life is purposeful? So, Zahira, the question, is that your experience also, meeting people that are interesting, charismatic, and what did you find about them?
I firmly believe that every person you meet comes into your life to serve a purpose. I've met some people who've encouraged me to write. I've met people who've shared their love for reading and directed me to certain genres, which I'm enjoying. So, and then I've met people who've basically made me want to look deeper into my life, make changes, improve myself as a person, and to pay it forward. So I'm grateful for the good and the bad. Some people have taught me that not everybody can be trusted, but through that, you learn that you need to be open to everybody because you learn so much and you use that as stepping stones.
So Zahira, I mean, from your responses, reading seems to be also an area in which those individuals you feel are people that focus on. Atia?
Yes, I was the same. I grew up in a household where my mother just loves reading. She had tons and tons of books, and she always encouraged us to read. From the time that I was a little girl, she always used to buy those little bedtime stories. And as you grow older, of course, then your identity shifts and you want to explore something that is in line with your own identity, or to see what influences your identity as a reader and writer, as myself. So, yes, beyond home, the home environment, school did the same thing. My English teachers throughout primary and high school always encouraged us to read. And the one thing that I remember about my grade 5 teacher is that she made it fun. She didn't make it as if it's only belonged to an elite group of learners who were deemed smart or intelligent. She just made it seem like it was an inclusive thing for everyone. So that's where my love grew. Because at home it was almost as if it was routine. You have to read at bedtime. But that's also what inspired me to be an English teacher, to say, because that lady changed my life and she made me see that reading can be fun, it's not for a specific group of people, then I instill the same values in my learners as well, because where I teach, the learners are learning English as a second language. So you have those barriers from time to time. So to break that is a very beautiful experience for me.
The 2 points that resonate, 2 critical points. The one point, your mummy's influence.
Yes.
That's fundamental, right?
Yes.
And the other, you had teachers, your English teacher, for example. Right. But I might surprise you with something.
Right.
I like surprise. You know that. Yes, I like it. The one surprise is, do you know the poorest readers in the world in terms of profession are teachers? Really? Yeah, shocking. Wow. And it's a sad indictment on the profession. Sad indictment on the profession. But I'm glad you had those teachers. Right. Now imagine how your life would have unfolded if you did not have mummy inspiring you to read, neither a teacher. It could have gone in any other direction.
Exactly.
Right? Yusuf, reading, I mean, in terms of my preamble, and I thought it was quite a forceful preamble, what is your response to that and what has been said?
I think for me, through my personal experience, I lived in a community, a very simple community out in the West Rand in Roodepoort. very close-knit communities. As you know, it was in the height of apartheid and so on. So, you know, it was the segregated areas we lived in. So it was a predominantly Indian area, but very small community. But what stood out very strongly was our local library. And it was a beautiful structure. It was a very simple structure, but when I recall, as you guys were speaking now, I just have fond memories about the library, right? We'd go there, okay, in front of the library was a little sports field, so we'd also play soccer. So you'd play soccer and then go into the library. And then there was this amazing librarian. I think when I grew up later, I found out he was from Lenasia. So he'd travel from Lenasia and he'd come to Rudaput and also encouraged us to read. He created a safe haven for us to come in there and just enjoy coming there and reading. So, you know, you'd be in the chaos of the world and then you'd come into this place and everything was beautiful. You have this kiddie section where you could play and then the books were there. So my association with reading is a very positive one, and I think that is important. I am trying to instill reading with my kids, and as you guys were speaking, I realized what we need to be creating. I mean, obviously the advent of technology and so on, libraries are becoming a bit of obsolete, right?
True.
But what's important is to create the positive image, the positive association to reading.
Right.
Okay, you know, this is a point. The point is this, it may be unfair to make a generalization. I found, for example, that lots of young people and even adults don't even read. They're just passive receptacles of television and so on and so forth. But I need to ask this question: why are people such lazy readers? Before we go on to why they should read and how we can encourage reading. Zahira, coming back to you.
I'm fortunate. I've always loved reading, but my parents don't read. I have two brothers.
That's quite surprising, right, when you spoke about your mother, right? Yeah.
I have two brothers and a sister. You'll never find them with a book. The group of friends I hang around with, they don't read, but I loved it because reading was like an escape. Reading, for me, is also therapeutic. And I find that a lot of people probably didn't want to read because it was forced on them. Like in school, you have to do 5 reviews for the year, but make it creative, make it joyful. You know that Harry Potter story? Why don't you sit and read it and try and visualize, you know, going to where his magic land and getting to his mind. Those are the creative ideas people should bring to you so that it makes you, it wants you to expand your imagination and, yeah, maybe I could, you know, I could be him and I could do this. I find that is more engaging, more encouraging for somebody to want to pick up a book and read. And if you do it in an interesting way, like a few buddies, let's go to the library, let's sit and read and encourage each other, read as a group. There's also the saying where a family that prays together stays together. Why can't it be that way with reading? Because if you implement these little steps, you're halfway there. And then the idea starts coming in. No, reading is good, let me do that. PS4s, yeah, it's exciting for a short while, but it's not as interesting as reading.
Alhamdulillah, viewers, the common thread I get from each one of you is to create that positivity. And the word is a recurring word, is encourage. And it's a very, very powerful, evocative word, encourage. It's no coercion. It is through cajolery, persuasion, and also, as you said, reading parents beget reading children. I'm hoping, inshallah, that through this interaction, inshallah, you would rekindle the passion for reading. You owe it to yourself, because in the end, if your mind grows, you benefit, and the people around you benefit. So read. Is it not ironical? You're watching television, I'm asking you to read. Watch our program, but immediately after this, start reading. Otherwise, we'll be back.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is there anything you want to add to what Zahira said in terms of why people don't want to read?
I want to add on, I always look at things from the perspective of a teacher now, because I've always looked at things from a perspective of a learner. I just find that with my learners, they don't find texts that relate to them, okay? So the texts that come out, the novels and everything else, you find that they don't, maybe they just don't have access to them, or what is prescribed by, you know, the Department of Education and whatnot. They don't prescribe texts that learners can relate to at some point, and sometimes it becomes boring for them because they don't know some of the scenes or the geographical location that has been spoken about. They don't understand the dynamics that are happening in the relationships in those stories, etc. So we always try to find, especially on our social medias now, you can access a lot of PDFs and stuff. There's always a bit of stories that are written by people that are not known, like authors that are just, you know, still rising and upcoming. And we read those stories because they can relate to them, because they're in the townships, they have names that they can pronounce, they are familiar with all of those dynamics that are happening in those stories. So I think it's very important to look at the context whenever you're asking somebody to read. You know, it's okay to expand at some point, but if you want to instill the love of reading, excuse me, then you have to start at a point where somebody can relate to something.
So you're speaking about age-related and interest-related, isn't it? That's a good starting point, you know, Yusuf?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is impacting our lives, and then especially reading as well, and I find this with my kids as well, is technology. Right? I think we've exhausted the topic before around social media and so on, but you find that I think our brains are becoming lazier with this constant flow of video, technology. So you want to find out about anything and there's a video around it.
Right, it's quick access.
Right, it's quick access. So, and I was reading something that said, I wasn't watching something.
I like that.
Said,
you have redeemed yourself, boy. Yes.
That said that when they measured our state of the brain, when you're watching something versus when you're reading something. And they say the state of your brain when you're watching something, either TV or whatever, is almost in a state of being dead.
Numb.
Wow. Now, when you're reading, you see, it gets that muscles working, the brain working, so that imagination working.
Right.
And so, I mean, these are, now we're talking about some of the benefits of reading.
Right, yes.
But so this is, we have to really understand that this video technology is impacting. And so if we just leave it the way it is, you're not going to get, you're going to find reading will become obsolete. So we have to encourage reading to happen. And I think that's where there has to be some sort of intervention. And as you guys were saying earlier, it has to be, and I find with any intervention, it has to be something that encourages, right? That what will entice me to read? Instead of it saying, no, you have to read because, and you're not going to get kids moving because of that.
So the point, and I think it's important for us to understand this dynamic. There are some families whom have succeeded, where every kid is an avid reader. In fact, some parents say, you know, I got to go to the room and tell my daughter, please, you have read enough. You know what I'm saying to you? You have that. Then we speak about technology. Today you speak to a father, he says, my son doesn't want to read. Then you ask the father, do you read? He said, no, I do not read. And that's important. It's very, very critical that we create this particular culture. Right? Atiya, coming back to you, right? And I think we need to communicate to the viewers, what are the benefits of reading? Right? What are the benefits of reading? And to talk about it so people understand it's there. Because many people say reading is equal to like schooling and education, like going back to school and whatnot. They don't understand there's tremendous pleasure you can extract. I recall in the earlier days when I started off as a teacher of English, there was someone conducting workshops throughout South Africa, from South Africa, and the theme was Portable Universe. He called the book A Portable Universe. It was so powerful, isn't it? A portable universe, and I'll never forget that. Atiya?
Well, one of the first things that I learned, and through Islam, you know, I'd have to just say now that it was only through reading that I embraced Islam. You understand? That is how I saw that, okay, this is the true faith. And you cannot gain knowledge if you're always a passive receiver of information coming from whichever direction. You have to decide for yourself what you are reading and how you're going to, as you said, because reading is stimulating, it stimulates your brain. You have to decide now, okay, what type of information am I going to take from whatever I'm getting from, and what am I going to do with that information? Okay, so the first thing that I would say, reading is one of those things that expands your knowledge, and nobody can take that away from you. You keep growing, okay? You can have no wealth, or you can be, whatever the case may be, but once you read and all of that knowledge is in your mind, no matter what happens, nobody can take that knowledge away from you. So I think that's the first, one of the most important things that I find is one of the benefits of reading. And the second thing is that you can build your identity as a person, because as I said, at one point you are told what to read, but as soon as you start, as I said, now that I'm a Muslim, you keep gaining a new identity of yourself, knowing yourself more. Reading things from other people helps you build yourself.
Correct, yes.
You see, so it's sort of like this back and forth thing going on between the book and yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just, I don't know whether we'll have the opportunity. And I could see some emotion also.
It is very
emotional when you spoke about the faith. And perhaps you want to share with us, what did you read that brought you to the faith, you know?
You know, it is an emotional experience for me. I embraced Islam when I was 16 years old. I used to stay with my sister in Houston, Texas, where she...
United States of America.
Yes, in the United States.
United States of down south, Louisiana.
So, one of the things that I found is that, you know, at that stage, you're trying to find who you are. And at that point, I felt dead. I didn't feel like there was anything that helped me grow. You know, we're living in a bad society. I mean, you know, there's good influences, but, you know, the influences from outside are really bad. And, subhanAllah, when I started reading the Quran, there's something that happened within me that I didn't understand, because you expect it to be, you know, they say that you have to go deep within the text and read and you know, understand what's it called, the tafsir of it. But at that stage, I was 16, something happened to me that I had to accept that there's no other way. This is the correct path for me to take. It wasn't that difficult. It was as if Allah was, you know, it is that way, but Allah was directly speaking to me as a person, as an individual, through this holy book, through this magnificent, truthful book. And I cannot actually put it into words. I'm actually not finding the right words to describe what happened to me once I read. It's like a veil was removed from my eyes. You know, because I grew up as a Christian Methodist. So once I embraced Islam, so many things started unraveling and building at the same time.
No, alhamdulillah, you know, as I said, we can see the emotion. I mean, that's the whole issue. I mean, when you speak about reading, it's not only about books of fiction and all of that. Of course, the Quran is a guideline for all of us, you know. And Allah bless you for sharing that personal story with us, right? Zaira, I mean, in terms of benefits and...
personally,
how did it help you? The Zahira that we know, confident, right, Yusuf?
Yes.
Confident.
you know, I like to read things that I know that I want to relate to. Am I allowed to mention names of authors and books?
Yeah, long as they, you know.
South African.
Okay.
There's a book that I read a few years ago. The author was Radar Jacobs, Confessions of a Gambler.
Yes.
And I could relate because we live in a community, yes, we're Muslim, but you find them in the casino. And this book helped me to relate to the issues. And I felt at peace because I'm not, you know, it's not a sin. It's an illness. And so many people go through it. And I fell in love with that. And it helped me realize that I need to read local content. Because when you read something, you've got to take something away from it. You know, when you close the book, okay, what did I read? I can give you a summary, but that's not good enough. How is it going to impact on my life? Those are the stories I like to read. So I also look for books that are therapeutic. and that will give me a message that I can, pay it forward and help somebody else with the experience.
I like what you are saying in terms of, gambling being a sickness, right? And the whole idea about something that can take you forward. So alhamdulillah, viewers, the discussions we are taking place, the whole purpose is we want you to read. We're not saying you're not reading. Perhaps you're not reading the right books. Perhaps you need to encourage your children to read. Inshallah, after this, I'll share with you my story. I know you're waiting for it.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My beloved brothers, for me, it doesn't make sense. If someone tells you, I do not read a book, I've never read a book. If a father says, I've never read to my children, or a mother says, I've never done that, it doesn't make sense to me. It is almost incompatible in terms of who you are. It is human nature. And I want to engage the panelists. They say an apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I know, for example, that when a father picks up a book, the kid also wants to pick up a book. Because my daddy did it. He's the only peer. And I don't understand why. I cannot believe, and with disbelief, really, that I find people do not read. And yet they say to themselves, no one listens to me. Because you know why? You're not interesting. You're bored. You're a boring individual. There's one person who wrote this book, and I want to just share this before I forget. It's a very, very powerful book. He was in the doldrums. He was out of work. He never read a book. And he wrote a book called Read and Grow Rich. He said, whilst he was there, almost amongst the dirt, he found a book of Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. He said that book, it inspired me. Today, he's doing such great work, and I would recommend the book, Read and Grow Rich. Besides your mind, your imagination, it will help you in your rosy, in your risk, so that you'll become a dynamic person. You go for a job, you say, man, I want to employ this guy. He's articulate, he listens, he's a person that is mature, and he can bring to me a wide range of experience, both in his real world and the world of books.
But you were going to tell us a story.
Oh, I hope you didn't ask me. Yes.
Yeah. Before the break, you mentioned you want to share your story of how you got to become an avid reader. So I think, wouldn't you want to listen to that? Yeah.
Say please. Say please. Please. Okay. I'll tell you what happened. I grew up in a home first where my father had a library. At that time, he used to get the Reader's Digest. He used to get on a monthly basis, I think it was. Basis, yeah. And then he used to get those books from Reader's Digest.
Everyone used to keep it in their washrooms.
That's true. Not my dad, though, right? Right. So, but what happened was still, my dad used to ask, I wasn't passionate about reading. But there was a story that took place when I was in grade 11. I was sitting next to this one girl, and my teacher of English, Ismail Katrada, may Allah bless him, and we were doing a poem, God's Grandeur. And I said, to myself, you know what? The last teacher who took me made me feel I'm useless, eroded my self-esteem. And I was an average student of English. And we were doing the last 2 lines of the poem. And he said to me, and he noticed I wasn't paying attention, So I was pulling this girl's hair and that kind of thing. Just checking her vital signs, in case she died, her father would have come to me, my daughter was next to you, she died, you never knew. So I said, I don't be caught unawares. So the teacher saw me, he said to me, Idris, he shouted. And I remember this, it took place umpteen years ago, right? About 50 years ago. Can you believe it? And I said, I'm 51.
I thought you were 21.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But anyway, just for, you got to exaggerate for purpose of impact. So he said to me, Idris, you're a naughty boy, you. I said, no. He said, I am not leaving the class until you give me your interpretation of the last 2 lines of the poem. And you know me, Idris. If you do not give me your interpretation, I will give you the cold shoulder. Do you want the cold shoulder from me? I said, no, please. So I gave an answer to get him off my back. Normally the class used to laugh at my responses. No one took me seriously. But there was a pause. He said to me, Idris, why don't you believe in yourself? He said to the class, the interpretation Idris gave me now was the best interpretation I ever heard in my life. And I want you to repeat that interpretation, and I want the class to note that interpretation. That was it. And what was further, he went to the class next door to do the same poem. And my cousin Amina was in the same class, and she came to us, and we were staying together in the same home. She said, you know, Mr. Smail Katrada was waxing lyrical about your interpretation. Then I said, I can do it, man. Wow, I can do it. That was a tipping point, and I started reading. Today, I have a modest, and I'm saying it not out of self-aggrandizement, just to vindicate it, to validate what I'm saying. I got over 3,500 books at home, and I love reading. That was a tipping point, and that was a turning point in my life. And 8 to 10 years later, I became the chairman of the English Society of South Africa. So therefore, I'm passionate as all of you are. We need to be passionate, and this is what the story I want to share. I hope it was...
What a powerful and inspiring story. I mean, there's a number of things that come out of this, but one thing is very powerful is say, if you want to find out about a man, and that is a woman as well, go and view their library. That's the wealth of a man. Today, what do? We associate wealth with just money. But we've become so fickle, haven't we? It is so important, yes, money, but there's so many more facets to life.
Yes.
And I think this is what, for me, reading does, is that benefits that it gives you. You spoke about read and grow rich. You could learn about faraway lands that you may never have or would never go to. But just reading about those lands inspires you to go there. Right? And it says when your mind is in that state, the law of attraction says, then you attract that. Right? You could read about the mystical lands of the Middle East, and then eventually your brain then tells you, I want to go there. And that's when you end up visiting those places. So it's really powerful.
Atiya, you spoke about the Quran, right? And something came to mind as a reminder to all of us that the first revelation given to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was not to pray, but to read. Ikra.
Yes.
Ikra.
Read in the name of the Lord who created.
In the name of your Lord. In the name of your Lord.
And this was to a man who was illiterate.
Yes.
And eventually brought the greatest book to us.
And that opened the whole world. Our understanding of Jannah, understanding of what's right and wrong, about what our purpose is. So, I mean, if you look at that, I mean, why? I mean, when you speak, and I want to ask, let us call a spade, right?
Right.
Today, when you speak to fathers, you speak to teachers, and teachers say, what can I do? They don't want to read.
Yes.
They're lazy. Am I right or wrong?
Yes.
Right.
That's all you hear.
And the mother
Kids
says,
are
my
lazy.
child doesn't want to read. They only want to play, right? Naughty boy, not mom, so naughty. Why can't you be like Fatima next door? You understand? And that next door is complaining to Fatima, why can't you be like Zahira or Atiya, for example? Now, are these not excuses? I mean, why? And you spoke about your teacher was creative, right? Now, what can we, I think is given. We won't talk about the benefits. It's given. There are benefits you can spend the whole day talking about benefits, right? But let's talk about what we need to do. That's important for me.
So what I do with my learners, what we can do is, because we know that people now are very digital, okay? We are moving, or even some people love the culture of reading a book and paging through it. But if we had to deal with now kids and teenagers, everything is, they want to touch screen, everything is on the fingertips. So why don't we create spaces like that for them, so that they can use that phone to access books, because, and make it more interesting for them. See, with my class, we have a WhatsApp group, okay? We have a WhatsApp group, and then I tell them, I just read this little short story of about 10 pages, because you can't force them to now read a novel if they don't read at all. They go, we read, we discuss, we laugh about it. This character's like this and that. So make it fun and use the what do you call the forums and the devices that they are used to. Don't take them away from what they use, because now they're addicted to it. Keep them there, but then start introducing, you know, these books to them, and they do. Like my class, they've already developed a culture of reading through this Funza, Funza site. The Funza, irregular learners write from it. Their peers write. So somebody who's my age wrote that. I want to read and I want to write.
So,
excuse me.
There you have. I think for me a recurring theme, and this is a very authentic conversation you're having, is that you've got to be passionate about it. And it's about, you've got to care. I mean, you cannot be a hypocrite. You don't read, you force people to read. And I think it's important. I have no doubt in my mind that if people, rekindle the passion for reading, you'll have a society that's far more transformed. They would respect the institution of marriage. They respect each other. They respect people of other faiths. And one of the things is becoming a recurring problem is a narrow thinking of individuals who have an extreme view of the faith, or a narrow view. But ask those that have read and who have traveled through that reading. Inshallah, in the next segment, we're going to give you perhaps some practical things that you can take away, inshallah. And please, I beseech you, I implore you, each one of you, to please read. And I know what reading has done for me. In fact, I will just end it off by this statement. And I say it only thankful to Allah. My teachers never believed that someday I'll be a public speaker. They never believed that someday I'll conduct workshops. With Allah's blessing, I've conducted workshops now in over 26 countries. And my biggest audience was in London, 10,000 people. Now it is only through Allah's grace, and of course, I embrace this noble habit of reading.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would recommend to everyone, whoever you meet, if they share with you their story, their tipping point, it can be uplifting for you. It will tell you, my gosh, I can also do it. What is holding me back? Zaira, before the program, you shared with us a very powerful, evocative, emotional story about why you read so much, and alhamdulillah, you have written a book also. Could you just give us an idea and share that personal, valuable experience with us?
Before we get to that, I fell in love with reading because I wanted to speak good English. I wanted to use the fancy words. So at any time in my handbag, I have a little book. So if I read something and I come across an interesting word, I'll write it down. And then I'll make a habit of researching the word. So the next time I speak to you, I'm going to use that word and impress you. Okay, so that started the idea behind reading. And I found that the more I read, the more I wanted to become a writer. And that was like my lifelong dream. And life's experiences gave me ideas on what to write about. And I wrote a book, but I didn't get it published because I didn't know how to, or I thought, who wants to read my book? But a few years ago, my late husband helped me do some research. I know this sounds harsh, but I needed to kill off a character in the book, and he helped me with that research. That was December. And, he joked, when this book is published, will you share the proceeds with me? And I can still hear him, laughing. And 4 months later, he passed away.
May Allah grant him the high status in Jannah, inshallah.
And now listening, he was really ill, but he still put his shoes on and he went to the hospital to do his ward rounds and get me the information I needed. And I needed to remember him. And I had this book. So that was encouragement. Don't let it go to waste. So I published the book. I self-published because not everybody wants to take a chance on you. Nobody knows Zahira, but I did it on my own. And the book is dedicated to him. And I feel like Allah's plan is definite. He saw me as a writer. And when my book was published, my CEO had so much of faith in me. And the first copy I received, I gave to her. Because she told me the year he passed away, the day you write your book, I'll buy the first copy. And that's exactly what she did. She actually did more. She bought 250 copies of the book for each woman in my company, and she handed it out on Women's Month. I just want to make something clear. I don't write to become rich, and I'm not here to promote my book. I'm here to encourage people to read and not to live a life of regret. I mean, everyone's afraid of doing things, but there are ways and means to get over your fear. But regret is something you'll never be able to live with.
Correct.
So if you want to write a book, do it. There's ways to get it done. And I'm always open to share those ideas with whoever is interested.
You know, really, it's a very powerful story. May you continue to do those great things. And in the last few minutes that we got, how can you encourage the viewers to develop this beautiful habit of reading? It's a beautiful habit. It opens new vistas. It opens your mind, right? Okay, and they say all great leaders are readers. And you find that those that are deficient, you'll find that perhaps they do not read enough. Yusuf?
Yeah, I think practically, you know, I find that with everything that we want to do in this world, one of the most important elements is discipline. And it's an emphasis in our beautiful religion, Islam, is discipline. It's not just about the esoteric and about the spiritual elements in, you know, convoluted manners. It comes down to earthly, practical issues. And what better mechanism that we have, which is we have 5 salahs, right? So if you work around those 5 salahs, and if you, after a salah, just picked up the Quran and read it for 5 minutes, and you read the Arabic and you read the English, you're going to learn something. It's what you picked up, right? And eventually you increase that. So after Fajr, you'll read 5 minutes initially, and then, you know, you go on again. And then eventually you'll read maybe 10, 20 minutes with the English, because that is, you're learning something. And then you can always include another book that wants, either a personal development book or a novel that takes you into another world, because so you have that discipline. And if we start doing it, then we start impacting our kids, so they start doing it, and that's when you find there's better self-esteem within ourselves, within our family. There's just you can start discussing these topics. So there's growth that takes place just by everyone learning. And if you look in the Quran, it's an emphasis. I think there's so many different places where they push you to say, ilm, learn, seek knowledge. How are you going to seek knowledge? Right? Is through this beautiful gift of reading. And we have it in the most beautiful book, the greatest of the books in the Holy Quran.
Atia?
I remember one of the first du'as that stuck to me, or what I heard, was the part where it says, Rabbi zidni ilma. Okay, so how do you ask for something if you don't also take the initiative to learn? So the same thing, you're asking Allah to increase your knowledge. What steps are you taking in order to have that knowledge to be increased? And I think you made a very good point to say our whole lives, our whole day is governed by our 5 daily prayers. How are you going to make that 5 daily prayers, instead of it being a routine, you know, because sometimes we get to that point because we're humans, how are you going to make that into a space where you learn something new every single day? It's 5 salahs, 365 days a year. Can you imagine what knowledge you would have gained by then? And it humbles you. Knowledge it humbles a person so much. You find that the most humble people are the ones who know more, and the ones who are arrogant, they know very little. So, you know, if we incorporate our daily rituals and our ibadah into reading the Quran and other things for pleasure, then I think it really would make us amazing people, indeed.
Anyway, I want to say to all of you, I mean, time goes so very fast. Allah bless you in all your endeavors, inshallah. May Allah answer your prayers. And it's my earnest prayer, inshallah, that through this program, inshallah, the love for reading will be rekindled, and it will create such a lovely ambiance at home when the family sits together and reads.
I just want to say one thing, if I can just say this, and I think this is very, very important, especially for our ummah, is that if we look at our problems as an ummah, right, it comes down to the fact that we are not inculcating this principle that our Creator has given us as a gift, this of seeking knowledge. And if we do that, as a family unit, we'll get stronger, as a society, we'll get stronger, and as an ummah at large, you will start seeing our problems eradicating, because we will have solutions to those, and we'll, because of that self-esteem, we'll be able to impact the world in a much better way, and then get Islam to where it is supposed to be in its impact in the world.
You know, I'm glad you interjected, because as a teacher, you know this. There's so many changes around us. It's our society, the external landscape has changed, the internal landscape of those children. It is said, if you do not learn today, you cannot teach tomorrow. How powerful is that? How powerful is that? You know, some of us have become cliches, you know, archaic. You understand? So, alhamdulillah, my viewers, we say this as part of Inspirate. We want to inspire you. We want to give you hope. But you cannot be a spectator in your life. You don't expect things to happen to you. Pursue knowledge. You know, one of the ironies of life is this. There was a time when students of knowledge traveled thousands of miles to confirm a hadith or to find out something. And today the irony is scholars are traveling thousands of miles to look for students. What has happened to us? And the shortest cut to that is to develop a love for reading. How nice, after a few months, your mommy sees you, says, Idris, you have changed. He says, Mommy, I'm an avid reader. Ha ha! She says, I like it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.